What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of
Biophilia.
What has your last week been like, Haley? What have you been up to?
Working. Yeah, I've had a lot of field work this last couple weeks. Oh, I saw condors the other day again.
What do you see him?
Out kind of same area, honestly, like Tejon Ranch area. Saw some European starling nests.
Just a bunch
Uh,
of birds.
I saw, yeah, some Cassin's kingbird nests.
These all sound like fake names.
It's real. Real birds. The birders know.
Birders know.
Yeah, what about you? What have you been up to?
Just got back from a 2-week-long road trip.
Oh, yeah, Chris has been gone for forever. What did you do? Where'd you go?
Oh, well, do you want the long version or the short version?
The short version.
6 national parks, 3 states.
Whoa!
Yeah.
That sounds so fun. What was your favorite part?
My favorite hike was probably in Lassen Volcanic.
Really?
Yeah. It was bizarre. We went there and we're not really expecting to do much because a lot of the park was closed because there's still a lot of snow and stuff on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this one there's one hike up to Crags Lake, which is this lake. It's lake with quotation marks.
Mm-hmm.
This lake that's only there during the winter. And so we started climbing it, and then about halfway up it, the path just became covered in snow. So shout out to All Trails. Just followed the All Trails route. And then you get to the very top of the hike, and there's like this beautiful, like, I don't even know, like super, super light blue lake on top of this
Whoa.
hill. And then like there's this giant mountain behind you that's like thousands of feet above you. Then there's like forests and everything.
Wow.
We were the only ones there. Like nobody was around us.
That's so nice.
So that was pretty
Did you jump in?
cool. Hell no.
I think you would have died probably.
Yeah, it was really cold.
But people do that. I know that glacier runoff stuff.
Yeah, I would not go in there.
Hmm.
It wasn't that deep either. It was a very small. That's why I said lake with quotation marks. It's like the size of this living room, probably.
That sounds beautiful though.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, shall we?
shall we?
Okay, so Chris has a cool new marine species to talk to us about this week. What do you got?
All right. So today we got one of the most important species on the California coastline. We got the purple sea urchin.
Yeah.
What have you heard about these bad boys?
No, I agree. I feel like that's like a good way to start because I think they're super keystone and a lot of their population numbers have a lot to do with a lot of other species and what's going on with like just general ocean health. And I think they're really important in a lot of ways, not even just in the ocean like health, but also I remember learning in genetics or in molecular biology that they are a super important research species because they're made of gonads, which is important for like genetic, I don't know.
Yeah, so you really, in summary, hit a lot of the things I'm going to be talking today. I'm obviously going to be diving a little bit more into it, but
Yeah.
pretty much hit all the big points on it.
Hell yeah. Okay, cool.
So you already know what we're going to start with.
What?
The scientific name.
Oh, great. My favorite part.
All right, guys. So I decided I'm going to start putting the pronunciation next to the words so I don't butcher them as hard.
Mm.
Probably still will butcher them a little bit, but here we go. So the purple sea urchin scientific name is Strongylocentrotus.
Try again.
Yeah. Strongylocentrotus. Strongylocentrotus.
Nice.
That's the first word. Purpuratus. Purpuratus.
That's kind of fitting. Purpur.
So exactly. So now let's break down the words. Strongylo is from Greek, and it's from the word strongylos, meaning round or spherical.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half of that word, centrochus, from Greek, is from the Greek word kentron, and it means center or point. And otis means like spines or ears. So
Whoa.
the first part is pretty much like round, spiny thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then purpuratus is from Latin, and it means purple. So this pretty much translates to purple, round, spiny creature.
Nice.
So pretty similar to like what you would be expecting from the scientific name because they pretty much nail it every time. But this one's really funny because it's just like
It's
exactly
so on the head, yeah.
So these guys are part of the phylum. Do you know what phylum they're part of?
No.
Echinoderms. Echinodermata.
What else is part of that family?
I'll get to that. But what do you think echinodermata means just when you think about sea urchins?
How is it spelled?
Echinodermata.
I don't know. I'm thinking something about like cartilage or chitin in the like exterior, and like because I'm thinking like chitin, derm, cardo, derm, something like the outer skin is like
Okay.
fard.
You're partly right with the skin portion. So echinodermata pretty much translates to spiny skin.
Oh, boom.
Yeah. So this includes starfish, brittle stars, sea urchins, sand dollars, and sea cucumbers.
Oh, wow. Sea cucumbers. Interesting. So it doesn't have to be hard. It's just like with more structure.
It's with just spiny skin.
Yeah.
They're recognizable by their usual 5-point radial symmetry. They are generally found on seabeds of the ocean from intertidal zones to abyssal zones, which is about 9,800 feet to 19,700 feet. They can range in like a wide range of the ocean. This phylum contains about 7,600 living species,
Wow.
and it is the largest marine-only phylum. No reaction for that? I thought that was a cool fact.
Yeah, he's just staring at me, waiting for me to say something.
Yeah.
No, that is cool. How many?
How many what?
What'd you just say?
There are 7,600 living species, and it's the largest.
7,000
Yeah,
living right now.
species. Yes, of the Echinodermata, of that phylum.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is a lot.
And then the family of the purple sea urchin. There's about 20 species in that. The size and age. So their test is around 3 inches, and their test is just kind of that little endoskeleton that's on their outside.
Yeah.
So it's weird because it's their endoskeleton, but they don't have any skin to cover it, so it looks like an exoskeleton.
So you're saying the endoskeleton is the ball within the spines?
Yes, like
Okay.
little like round spherical.
But
thing.
is that like, yeah, what's the texture of that? Is it hard?
It's hard. It's carbonate, calcium carbonate.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then how long do you think these bad boys live for?
20 years.
So on average, 20 years.
What?
Yeah, but
Dude, I'm on.
Dude, you're on it
Sea
today.
urchins, bro.
But they can live as long as 70 years.
70?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the biology of them. So urchins, they have 2 feet on their bottom surface.
Oh, there's a top and a bottom.
Yes.
Well, that's somewhere to start because I didn't expect that. Because they're spherical. I thought they were perfectly spherical, so I didn't think there was top bottom.
It's like a dome kind of. So the bottom surface is called the oral surface because that's where its mouth is.
Yeah.
So the urchins have 2 feet on all of their surfaces, but they move with the ones on the bottom. If a food were to land on, let's just say, the urchin's back, the 2 feet will slowly move it down and around to the urchin's mouth.
Are you saying tube feet or 2 feet?
Tube.
Oh,
Tube feet.
That's where I was confused because I was hearing
No,
two. I was like, this is not making sense.
No, yeah. Tube feet to move on surfaces.
Okay.
And that's on their bottom side, which
I
is
hear
the
you
oral
now.
surface side.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, like I was saying, if food lands on their back, they can move it with the tube feet all the way around.
Have you seen that in the aquarium?
Yeah.
That you work in? Like all of I love when they move their legs. You think that they can't move because they're so rigid, and then they're like, yeah, they can come together. They can like.
Those are the spines you're talking about.
Oh, there's legs besides spine.
Yes.
The tube feet.
The tube feet. The tube feet are small. The spines are big.
So how do they connect to the ground? Or they like something would fall within the spines, and then the tube feet move it.
Yes.
But the spines can also move.
The spines can also move. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And something cool about these tube feet is this is actually what they breathe through.
Whoa.
It's part of their water vascular system. It's pretty much what they do is you can like exchange gases through it. So it helps uptake oxygen and then it'll diffuse out carbon dioxide. But it's not the only part of their way of breathing. They also have these things called the peristomial gills. And this is also located on their oral surface. It's a thin-walled structure that allows for gas exchange, and it helps supplement oxygen uptake, but it's not their main respiratory organ, like I was saying. The tube feet are. So
the tube feet, all of them have the same respiratory function? It's not like one side or the other side or some of them?
Yeah, all of them.
Interesting. That's super cool.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense also because there's a lot of surface area if you think about it by putting it on the tube feet because each foot could have.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
because it's protruding.
It's like in our lungs with what are they called? The alveoli or whatever?
Yeah, alveoli.
Alveoli because it's so much surface area, so it's a lot easier to diffuse in, diffuse out.
Yep.
And it's probably, again, like a concentration gradient. So now about the mouth of the sea urchin. So these guys have pretty interesting mouths. They have a specialized feeding structure called Aristotle's lantern.
Whoa, that's a
Yeah.
cool name.
So why do you think it's called that?
Oh my gosh, bro. I don't know.
So it actually it talks about Aristotle in his era.
Whoa.
He wrote about him in a structure in his.
Oh, he was studying sea urchins?
So he wrote about it in his work Historia Animalia, which pretty much refers to history of animals. The lanterns in his time had like a really cool like geometric metal frame,
Mm-hmm.
and he thought they looked a lot like the sea urchins, and so he literally called it Aristotle's lantern for the mouth, and it has just stuck around since.
Wait, can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So Aristotle lantern,
Mm-hmm.
Aristotle in his time period, he had a book called Historia Animalia, which is
Mhm.
pretty much history of animals, where he kind of just like outlined whatever he thought about the animals in that time. And during that time, there were the candle or the lantern holders that would hold the candles and stuff like that, had a metal frame that was very geometric
Yeah.
and kind of resembled the urchin's mouth. So that's what he would call
Whoa.
it, and has just stuck around since.
Okay. Wow, I heard you that time. That's really interesting. So it looks like a lantern?
Here's why. It consists of five calcareous plates that function like teeth. These teeth help the urchin scrape, cut, or chew food from surfaces. It uses its teeth and spines to dig holes in stones, which can become their hideaways. So the urchin will literally carve into
Oh.
the rock to where it can hide in there.
Yeah, so it's kind of even with the ground or whatever.
Yeah.
It'll like kind of tunnel itself down.
Yes.
I've seen that, yeah.
But sometimes they grow larger than their dugout, and then they're stuck in there for life because then they can't get out.
Oh no.
And then the only thing they can do is just depend on like food drifting by.
Oh,
So it's kind of interesting. They can literally accidentally dig themselves into a.
is that a main cause of death for them?
No. No.
Okay, so it just happens, but
It happens, but it's probably like honestly survival of the fittest right there.
Okay.
And these teeth are actually so strong that they can even drill through steel pilings by flaking away the rust that coats them.
What?
So these teeth are extremely strong. I mean, they're literally cutting through rocks. They're grazing algae off the.
What are they made of? Do you know? Like, how are they harder than steel?
They're calcareous plates, which is, let me look this up real fast. Calcium carbonate. It's a calcium yeah. It's kind of a calcium carbonate, I guess, type plate of teeth. The top side of the sea urchin is called the boral surface, and this features the anus and a small opening called the peripocrot. It's pretty much what that is. It's a flexible plates that allows for the ejection of waste through the anus. So it's kind of like our sphincter, I'm guessing, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're gonna get to the spines, which you were very confused about earlier.
Yeah.
They are made of a single crystal of calcium carbonate.
Whoa, interesting.
And the internal structure is very porous. So that's why they're so lightweight. It's not just a solid calcium carbonate crystal, it's just very porous in the middle.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And their habitat is pretty widespread. It's all the way from Alaska to the southern portion of Baja California.
That is pretty widespread.
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, lives in low intertidal to near subtidal communities. So
there's no deep sea urchins?
Not of this. The purple sea urchin doesn't get deeper than like.
Oh, I forgot we were doing just weird.
Yeah, some of the other ones get super, super deep. But the purple sea urchin, it's like 100-ish feet.
Yeah, more coastal.
So now we're going to get to the reproduction. These creatures generally reach sexual maturity at 1-2 years. Their reproductive months are January, February, and March. So the last couple months.
Uh-huh.
The spawning occurs when the male and female release their gametes into the surrounding waters.
How does that happen?
What do you mean?
I'm kind of confused how they would release gametes because they seem like one hard ball. That is it. Like, where do the gametes come out?
They have the gonads. They just come out of their pores, out of their skin.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering if there was like a reproductive organ that shoots them out, or no.
You know what the reproductive organs are, right?
What?
You know the uni?
Yeah.
That's the reproductive.
Yeah, I know. The inside.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how they get out.
Just through their skin, through the pores.
Wow.
Yeah. So they are released. This definitely occurs during.
Is that common for a lot of like marine species, maybe in that family or?
Well, corals do this also. Acroporas do this, where they release the gametes
through the skin,
or just through them, like they just release it.
That's wild, though. Don't you think? Because think about terrestrial species. Like that's not a thing. You don't just produce gametes through your skin.
I mean, it's not. The thing is, you got to think about it. They're not just a skin.
Yeah.
Like
no, I'm thinking of it in like 2D, going everything in larger.
Also, like these things are invertebrates, so it's not even anything relative to a vertebrate in that sense.
Yeah, and also they're in fluid.
Yeah.
But on land, you need fluid to.
What are you even saying?
Because, okay, I could go on a long thing about it, but the fluid of the ocean is what helps all of this happen because they couldn't do all this without that.
Yeah, because it's
Because air couldn't do that.
it's exactly it's a medium for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the male and females release their gametes into the surrounding waters. This occurs during specific environmental conditions, such as changes in temperature, moon phases, or other things like that. This is very similar to corals. Corals will do the same thing when it's around the same, like if it's this like the right moon phase, right temperature, and all that. All the corals in that species will release all of its gametes at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. Just as like they have to have some sort of biological clock that is so in tune with the earth and everything that every single creature has to release at the same time. Because otherwise, if you don't release at the same time, the chances of fertilization go down significantly.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, the fertilization occurs in the water column. The sperm swim towards the eggs using chemical signals released by the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a process called chemotaxis. Eventually, once the eggs and the sperm fertilize, they create the zygote, and the zygote develops into a free-swimming larva called a Pluteus larva. Eventually, this larva undergoes metamorphosis and settles on the seafloor to develop into a juvenile sea urchin.
The larva, does it resemble a tadpole, or is that?
I have no idea what they look like.
Because I wonder if they're stationary, if they have a tail. Can you look it up really quick?
They're free swimming.
So they do have a tail at some point.
Yeah, but I'm not really sure if they can swim against a water current. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they might just float along.
Yeah.
I wonder what the larvae look like.
To me, it looks like some sort of like spacecraft, like something Elon would send out to the moon.
It looks like a hand or something that's like.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a jellyfish in the sense where it's like
it has some prongs off the back and it's propelling itself forward. Yes, interesting.
I don't know. That's pretty bizarre.
Okay.
So like I was saying, they rely on external fertilization. So spawning synchrony is very crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And so another thing that's kind of, I didn't even think about this, but they were saying is you should be in dense populations nearby then to have higher chances of fertilization. Because if
you want to be in where everybody's at, or else you're not going to be part of the party.
Exactly. I didn't even think about that, but it makes a lot of sense.
They are kind of always congregated in one area.
Well, yes and no. I'll get into that. And actually, I can just talk about it right now. In the intertidal zone, like, tide pools and stuff like that, they're generally solitary. If you think about it, when do you see 5-6 urchins right next to each other in a tide pool?
I feel like you do.
You don't. There's not enough food there. That's where they bore themselves in the holes.
Why? What's it? What's the advantage of putting yourself in a hole versus just staying free swimming? So it's just a choice that some make.
Yeah, it's for protection.
Yeah.
But then, like you're saying, if you see once you go to the subtidal zone where it's a little bit deeper, that's where you see the large congregations of them.
Okay.
So generally in the subtidal zone is where you're going to see a larger congregation of the sea urchins. Mm-hmm. And that's where I feel like the sexual or the reproduction would be a lot higher. Female purple sea urchins release several million eggs during a spawning event. And the percentage is pretty small of how many get actually fertilized. They say only about 10% to 40% do. But still, 10 to 40% of a million is a shit ton.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about uni. So if you guys don't know what uni is, it's pretty much their reproductive organs. It's called their gonads. It's these bright orange and yellow kind of like squishy things.
I was just going to say, how you used to work at a sushi restaurant.
I did too.
No, you.
Yeah.
And me.
Yeah.
But you were a sushi chef.
Yeah, I was a sushi chef, yes.
Crafting that uni.
Well, I never got to touch the uni because these things are a little bit more expensive, so they didn't trust me with the uni.
Oh no!
But I got to do everything else.
I had to learn about like all the different fish in Japanese, and I remember learning that. I was like, no way.
Yeah. So if you guys have never tried uni, I would recommend it at least one time in your life. It's
not my favorite.
It's not my favorite either. It's kind of the best way to describe it is like tastes like the ocean, like just tastes like salt water, but it's kind of got a richer buttery taste to it. It's also kind of a bizarre texture. It's kind of boogerish in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit firmer than a booger. I don't know how to describe it really. I feel like it's something you just got to try. It's a delicacy in some countries.
Mm-hmm.
People really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I actually looked up. I was really interested. I was like, how much does uni actually go for? So I found the wholesale price for California.
Whoa, wholesale?
There's a whole website about it, actually. So in 2025, the wholesale price for California is going to be between $16.50 up to $50 per pound.
But damn.
And that's obviously depending on the grade and quality of the uni.
Yeah.
I've heard that Santa Barbara has some of the best uni in
the world. Per pound, do they like cut out the gonads, or
This
it's with the
no,
whole
this is just uni.
urchin?
This is just uni.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there's also wholesale prices for live urchins, which
Right.
is also on the website. And the interesting thing is the export price per kilogram of, and obviously per pound, of sea urchins from the U.S. has seen a steady decline over the last 5 years.
Why?
It's a great question.
I feel like urchins were maybe popping in the news for a second. So do you think people actually care? Maybe.
I feel like maybe it's the abundance of urchins that people are grabbing now is causing a decline. Because I feel like we've been harvesting more and more, and so that drives the price down. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Next time you guys are at some sort of sushi store, just try something with the uni and
but don't overfish.
I'll get into that. I'll get into that with the unis because sometimes you can. I'll get into it.
I know. I think I learned about this in marine conservation biology.
But first, I'm going to talk about their diet. What do you think they eat?
Ooh, well, I feel like
teeth.
yeah, you said like things that kind of come to them sometimes. So I'm just thinking like, do they have any stickiness? Like, can they just grow?
They're 2 feet. That's how they grip onto things.
Okay. So all the small guys in the water is my assumption, like zooplankton, phytoplankton,
Nope.
Fish?
Nope.
Small fish?
Nope.
Shrimp?
Nope.
Who?
Red, brown, and green algae.
Oh, I knew that. I did know that because that's the whole point of why they're important.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so these guys eat strictly algae. That's why they have those teeth to kind of grind it off the rocks and pry it off of there. What do you think they are preyed on by?
Sharks.
No.
There's this whole what is it, like trophic
cascade?
Yeah, a trophic cascade with these.
Yes.
I can't remember.
Okay, so the things that eat sea urchins are sea otters.
Yeah, they break them with their rock.
Yes.
Did you know that sea otters usually keep one rock their whole life?
Yeah, they keep it with them. It's their little friend.
Isn't that so cute?
Yeah. So the sea otters, well, they'll dive down to the bottom, pick up the urchin, and literally just like you can hear it if you're on shore. Like they'll literally smashing the urchin until it breaks in half. Something funny about otters that eat a lot of sea urchins, their teeth turn purple.
No.
Yeah, and they have like spines and stuff in their teeth.
What?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So it's pretty easy to tell when an otter's been feasting on urchins.
Yeah, because they do have some sort of dye. Are you going to talk about that? Have you ever put a sea urchin leg on your finger?
No, I've actually never talked about the dye. I don't know about the dye.
So I don't remember where I learned this from, but essentially if you were to like take one of their spines and like push it onto your hand or your finger, it will leave a mark on you.
Oh.
Like it's temporary, obviously.
Yeah.
But it leaves like a brownish black mark.
Oh, I did not know that.
So you can like paint with sea urchin.
Oh.
Not really, but essentially.
Yeah.
Like it transfers ink.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of their other prey, or some of the other things that prey on sea urchins are sunflower stars and California sheephead.
Oh, those huge sea stars.
Yes. The ones that have a lot of legs.
Yeah.
And then also the California sheephead. Do you know what those are?
Yeah, they look crazy.
Well,
those are around here.
Yeah. I was down by Point Loma. We were diving for lobsters, and we got back on shore, and we saw these guys come back that came spearfishing, and this one guy had a giant sheephead. It was probably like 2 feet long, maybe 3 feet long, and like a good like 15, 20 pounds. It was pretty dope.
Dang. Yeah, those things are huge. They look crazy.
They're really ugly. They have gnarly teeth.
I was going to say, they must have crazy teeth.
Crunch down on it.
Yeah, if they're eating those things.
So.
Have you ever stepped on a sea urchin?
No. Broken.
Gone, broken.
Yeah.
No, I haven't either.
I feel like that's where everybody knows that from. Because I feel like I don't really hear a lot of people step out on sea urchins. But like.
No, I feel like you're more likely to step on a ray or something.
Or even cut yourself on coral.
Yeah.
But it's like everybody knows it from shout out Surf's Up.
Surf's Up was so good.
Top 5 soundtracks ever on a movie.
Yep.
Okay. So the fishing regulations. These guys have interesting fishing regulations depending on where you're at. I'm only looking at California. Depending on where you're at in California, it varies. So in the broad span of California, if you're not in any specific location, you are allowed to have 35 urchins per day for each species. So you can have 35 red urchins, you can have 35 purple per day. But if you were in the counties of Humboldt, Mendocino, or Sonoma, You may take up to 40 gallons while scuba diving or skin diving. And so the way you have to harvest these things is you can't use machines. You have to harvest them by hand.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also these things called sea urchin rakes, which is pretty much how much you would sound. Instead of grabbing it, kind of rake them. And so what people do is they'll dive down with a bag and they'll rake them into a bag once they go down to an area where a lot of sea urchins are at.
Yeah.
And so like I'm saying, 40 gallons is the limit when you're in Humboldt, Mendocino, and Sonoma. And then in some areas,
40 gallons, that's a lot,
oh
no?
yeah, oh yeah. But here's the
Is
crazy.
it because there's an overgrowth?
Yes, it's definitely an overgrowth. But then I'm going to hop into that in a second. But there's even places where you can get more than 40 gallons. In Casper Headland State Beach, which is commonly referred to as Casper Cove in Mendocino County, if you go seaward of that, so more towards the ocean, there is no limit on the amount of purple sea urchins you can take.
Why wouldn't everybody just go there? The sea urchin farmers.
They probably are based out of there. And there's another place in Monterey County called Tanker Reef, where there's also no limit to your bag for sea urchins. So you can take as many as you want.
That's interesting. So it's like super variable rules wherever you're based out of.
Exactly. And obviously, like you were saying, this is for the purpose of restoring the kelp ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to kind of talk about their population and how this whole thing has occurred. Purple sea urchin populations have exploded in the recent years. Some areas have seen up to 1,000% increase. And this has led to the devastation of a lot of kelp forests because, as we were saying, these purple sea urchins will go around and they'll eat the kelp. And without the kelp forest, it takes away a lot of habitat for other creatures that are like fishes, and sharks, and whatever else is in the kelp forest because it provides a lot of protection from them. The urchin population has been partially attributed to the decline of its natural predators. So, like the sea otters were decimated by fur trappers. The sunflower sea stars were ravaged by sea star wasting disease in 2013, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And marine heat waves have also been a contributing factor to the decline of the kelp forests. The way how this pretty much works is if we don't have sea otters to dive down and catch the sea urchins and break them open and kind of keep the population in check, then the sea urchins population rises a lot and will kind of graze down whole kelp forests. And you can go online and look at these pictures. They're called urchin barrens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's insane. It's literally for probably some of them are like hundreds of meters long, and it's just thousands upon thousands of sea urchins with not a single thing of kelp nearby. And that's because of the decline of sea otters, which are their predators, and then also because of the sunflower sea stars, since there's not those anymore that are also to keep the population in check because a lot of them died due to sea star wasting disease. That's another reason why these urchins have been able to consistently grow and grow and grow. And so that's why these fishing regulations are so loose in some areas, is to try and restore balance in these areas. But I feel like there should also be another contributory program to this. I know at Birch, I think they're actually trying to grow or help restore the sunflower sea star population at Birch.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how many like sea otter breeding programs there are to try and restore them. I have not something I've like looked into.
I thought you did a really good job explaining that exactly what's going on with like what's rising and what's declining. And I think it's really important to understand like why fishing regulations are in place and how important that is, and why that there's a few open, like completely open for sea urchins, because keeping everything in balance, how it's meant to be without human interruption, is the goal.
Exactly. And so that's just kind of the thing about sea urchins. If you guys see an urchin barren, you know.
And it's also interesting if you've never watched a sea urchin time lapse eating a kelp forest.
Pretty cool.
It's really cool because you could just see it is like
they decimate it fast.
Yeah.
And so these guys have an insane amount of interesting facts. So this is going to be fun. First one I have is, like I was saying earlier, if the sea otters are eating purple sea urchins, their teeth turn purple and they have like little like spikes and stuff in there. Urchins that are in the intertidal zone, so kind of like the tide pools in that area, will decorate themselves with shells, rocks, and pieces of algae. And scientists believe that this is like their way of thinking that protects the urchin from drying out, getting eaten by seagulls, which I guess apparently if you're up towards the top, they'll come down and grab you.
Uh-huh.
Or being damaged by the sun's ultraviolet rays. So they kind of use it as a sunscreen, the algae and shells and whatever not.
That's
So they
cool.
kind of use it as like protection and also just like decoration. Sea urchins, interestingly, are one of the animals that can recognize changing water parameters first. Like they're the ones that kind of really experience and show physically what's going on when there's stress during algal blooms.
How do they show that?
I'm gonna get into that. So generally, if the water exceeds over 22 and a half ish degrees Celsius, it increases their mortality. And when they're in these stress states, they go into a mode called zombie mode.
What?
Yeah, and so what they do basically is become sluggish or stop moving entirely. The spines droop and they stop twitching.
Oh.
The tube feet retract and become non-functional, so they kind of just like drift around and just kind of like there's not a lot
They're
of like life to
sad.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
their metabolism slows down because they got to conserve energy, and so like I was saying, these are not actual death, but it's a form of dormancy to conserve their energy.
Yeah. Whoa. That's interesting.
So with all this anthropogenic climate change, which if people don't know what that word means, it means human caused climate change. This has been a big portion on all creatures, but specifically with these guys, it's been a kind of a problem because they're starting to enter the zombie mode in areas where it's not as beneficial if they were to be in zombie mode because the problems where we're having a lot of urchin barrens isn't in the southern portion of their habitat. It's in the northern portion of their
Where it's
habitat
colder.
where it's colder and the urchins are still healthier. So the urchins that are actually the urchin populations that are actually fine and in check are the ones
That are suffering from zombie
this.
disease.
Exactly. So here we go. This kind of talks back to what you're relating to earlier about they are used as model organisms, and their genome was the first echinoderm genome to be sequenced.
Mm-hmm.
The genome.
We learned about this from Grant Hartzog
Grant Hartzog, what
at
a guy.
UCSC.
I love that guy. Shout out Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And the purple sea urchin was completely sequenced and annotated in 2006, so pretty close to the Human Genome Project in that same time period,
Yeah.
by a team of scientists from over 70 institutions.
Wow. And did you explain why they picked the sea urchin?
It's just a very easy organism to see its growth.
Yeah.
And they have large sexual organs. So
Yeah.
it's like very easy to, it's just very, they're not that complicated of a creature to like watch grow.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty easy to contain and like sustain. So,
and they also reproduce quickly and in large numbers.
Exactly. They're like rats and flies. Like we use them in the same sort of sense.
Yeah. Just a really good model organism.
These guys actually led to the discovery of 3 distinct eukaryotic DNA-dependent RNA polymerases. So let's get into molecular biology.
Okay.
What is RNA polymerase?
Bro, what?
Something that makes RNA, right?
Oh, it's an enzyme that makes RNA.
Exactly. It's DNA dependent. So DNA is the protein structure that goes and binds to the sequence of the gene and transcribes the RNA. So they found 3 distinct ones in the urchins.
Wow, that's huge.
Yes.
Very cool.
And in 2012, scientists at the University of St. Andrews began investigating the 2A viral gene region in their genome.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to jump into 2A in a second, but I'm going to explain why this can be useful. It may be useful for Alzheimer's disease and cancer research because the study identified a sequence that can return cells to a stem-like state. Stem cell-like state.
What?
Allowing for better treatment options, obviously.
That's crazy.
And this is because of a process called ribosomal skipping. So the way how the 2A region works is, let's just say you have the DNA polymerase or RNA polymerase, whatever you want it to be. In this instance, it's going to be RNA polymerase because we're going to be talking about proteins. And it reaches the 2A region.
Mm-hmm.
What it does then is it breaks off from the actual genome. So it breaks off from the gene.
Uh-huh.
And then it moves up to a next region, probably the next 2A region, and continues to transcribe.
So it skips that whole piece?
It skips the piece in between the 2 regions. And so why this is very useful is because then you don't need to cut up the long nascent strand of RNA.
Uh-huh.
You just have individual strands that are just the protein itself. The reason why this is useful is because it can produce a lot of proteins off just one chain. And so you can kind of isolate certain genes that you really want to express to restore certain statuses in the cell.
Okay.
So now I'm going to jump into recent research. So this paper is called Variation in Purple Sea Urchin Morphological Traits in relation to resource availability. This was published on April 27th, 2001 by Joshua G. Smith and Sabrina C. Garcia. This research was conducted along the southern end of Monterey Bay, California from June to September in 2017. A total of 83 randomly assigned subtitle survey sites to evaluate sea urchin size, structure, and density. So it's size and how many there are there, and habitat type, which is barrens versus kelp forests, and algae cover.
Uh-huh.
This was also conducted in 5 to 20 meters of water on rocky reef substrates. That's generally where you're going to find a lot of urchins, is on a rocky reef substrate. In this experiment, a total of 1,058 sea urchins were collected for the study. So this is where they kind of get into what they found in the study. Sea urchin density was greater in barrens than in the kelp forest habitats. So in the areas where there actually was food, the population was less than the places where they had decimated the food.
Did they say why they think that is?
No, they didn't.
Do you have any ideas? Because I have one.
Go ahead.
I think it might be because since you're saying like they congregate kind of for reproductive successfulness, I'm thinking what if the kelp kind of interrupts that? Like if there's dense kelp forests in the way of their gametes finding one another, or the like, what did you call it? Like basically hormones that are emitted from the eggs to tell the sperm where to go. What if that interrupts what's going on there? So they need more open water spaces to like have successful reproductiveness in the way that they need.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought. I could definitely see how that works. I have no idea though. That makes sense though, because then it's an obstacle that's obstructing everything that's occurring.
Exactly.
And then the other things they found is pretty much what they were doing is they were going to see how the sea urchins shift energy allocations in response to food limitation.
Is that kind of where they went into what you were saying about the drooping, like where they found the responses about energy, like depletion?
Well, that's when the actual environmental aspects are bad, then all of them face that. This is just more if they have food in their habitat or not food in their habitat, how they're going to allocate.
I see, but it's kind of just food. It's not like overall ocean conditions.
Yeah, this is just food. The urchins had more elongated jaw structures relative to body size in barrens. So in the places where there was not a lot of food, they had bigger mouths. And then sea urchin reproductive capacity was lower in barrens, and the barrens habitat was primarily compromised of encrusting algae. So in the barrens, there wasn't a lot of, large kelp that are reaching the top. It's a lot of just like coralline algae and other really small, like maybe batches of algae that just kind of grow on rocks and aren't the best of food. So it was interesting because there's an inversely related thing about these two things. And the results suggest that sea urchins respond to macroalgae limited environments by shifting energy allocations between reproductive capacity and modifications of the foraging apparatus. So pretty much what they're saying with that is like when there's not a lot of energy, they focus it towards having a larger mouth to maybe obtain more energy.
Yeah.
While the ones that do have food,
and that makes sense because I feel like how you were saying, it's just if you don't have that much energy, you're not going to be able to move as much to go get your food. So if you have a larger mouth, it's easier for you to just get food that's floating by, or that's just convenient.
Exactly. So that was the first papers I looked at. There was a lot of papers. A lot of them are really like molecular biology heavy. And so I figured probably not to dive into those because that would be jargon everywhere.
Yeah.
But this one is another one published in June 19th, 2001. It's called Exploring Impacts of Marine Heat Waves. Paternal heat exposure diminishes fertilization success in purple sea urchins. So pretty much in this one, they were seeing if urchins that for generations had been in warmer water compared to colder water, how their fertilization rates would be affected.
Like, did they move them?
So they grabbed some from warm water, they grabbed some from cold water, and then they introduced both of those to both cold water and warm water.
Whoa, what a experiment. That's cool.
Conditioned males
Did you say who conducted this?
I did not see which institution published this research. So what they would do is they had the males conditioned for 28 days, either high or low, and then they tested the sperm of the individuals by conducting fertilization success trials at varying temperatures and sperm concentrations. This is the interesting part. While sperm appeared robust to elevated temperature during fertilization, so even the ones that were in really warm water had a lot of sperm. Sperm produced by the high temperature acclimated males had overall diminished performance as compared to those acclimated to the non-marine heat wave ones. So this is interesting that the ones that are more acclimated to the higher water temperatures, they produce a lot of sperm, but the sperm isn't as strong and doesn't fertilize as many as the ones that are not actually acclimated to the marine heat waves.
Interesting.
So this is again kind of one of those instances where it's a negative feedback loop because the water's going to get warmer, the animals aren't going to be able to breed and reproduce as much, and it's going to cause their population decline, and these other environmental stressors are going to already cause the population to decline. So it's just a continuous negative feedback loop on this species. And that is what I have for the purple sea urchin.
Wow. That was some good info.
Yeah.
A little bit technical, but we got through it.
So it's definitely technical at some points. I tried to break it down to more understandable topics in a sense, like easier ways to look at it.
I think that was so interesting, and that was one of my favorite sea creatures that we've learned about so far. I think that was so much information, and they have so much density for such a tiny little thing.
That's how I felt. Like when I was researching, I was like, oh my God, there's this and there's that and
there's so many pieces of it. It's like, it's food. It's like such an interesting biological topic, and it's such an interesting genetic molecular biology topic. Like, that's wild.
And then the food game, it's crazy. These things are wild.
They got a hand in everything. They got a tube leg and everything.
They do got a tube leg and everything.
Okay, that was super cool. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you guys for listening. I think we should ask the listeners, drop down in the comments below what you guys want to hear next.
Yeah, give us some species suggestions, please.
I feel like me and Haley are sometimes struggling to think about it, but if we get your guys' help,
What do you want to learn?
Yeah, what do you want to learn about? Also, we would appreciate it if you guys drop a 5-star review. That'd be great.
Yes.
We have officially overtaken the other biophilia podcast. I looked at that the other day.
Don't tell them about that.
Why not? Let's flex on them.
That's so funny.
But thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.